Depression is a mental illness that affects 18.8 million Americans in any given year. Although widely misunderstood, depression is one of the most common mental disorders in the world. Depression is an illness that involves the body, mood, and thoughts, that affects the way a person eats and sleeps, the way one feels about oneself, and the way one thinks about things. Recently, much concern about depression regarding college students has risen in response to the tragic shooting that took place on April 16, 2007, claiming the lives of 33 students at Virginia Tech University. While it is important for people to understand that violent outbreaks can result from depression, it is also vital for people to understand that those dangerous behaviors are the exception and not the rule when it comes to depression. You see, the reality is that as college students, academic, social, and financial pressures leave us all at risk for depression. The good news is, however, that there are several resources available to help us overcome this illness, and there is hope beyond depression.
Most of the research that we have available says that mental illnesses are rising on college campuses, both in just the rate of mental illnesses and the severity of mental illnesses.
I think I was first depressed in high school. That was, I guess it's a normal time for a lot of people to get depressed. I actually was involved with a lot of things, but after a while, it had actually been probably a few years that I realized I had mostly been depressed the entire time, even though I had been going out and doing things. Just, I felt like this aloneness, like I didn't fit in with the people I was with.
A lot of personal experience with depression in my life. It's something that I've been dealing with since I was in high school, probably around my junior year. A lot of it seemed to coincide with a death that I had dealt with in the family, but as time went along, it just seemed to be like something even larger than that. So it's something that I dealt with almost through the end of high school, and because of my faith, my relationship with God, it was something that I felt that I had freedom from, that, you know, basically God took away.
Some of the social factors that contribute to mental illness on campuses really have to do with students being under more pressure, the students experiencing more stress as they're in school.
In this day and age, because we live in a society that's so heavily dependent on technology, it has caused a lot of people to become a lot more materialistic. As a result of that, you start to see, you know, what some researchers are calling materialistic depression, and that is evident in college students because of the levels of competition, because of social comparison. People start to equate their self-worth with objects and material things, and so to the extent that, you know, a particular college student may or may not have some type of item or object that other people have, then that could in some ways engender and bring about this questioning about their self-worth, which could lead to the presentation of depressive symptoms. What they tend to underscore is the extent to which society is responsible for you know, giving us these socialized messages about who we are, and our worth is tied to, you know, what other people think we should have or how other people think we should look.
My first year in college, that was the first time that I recognized it immediately that I was depressed. I went to a different college. It was in the middle of nowhere. The only person I knew was my roommate, and thank God I knew her, because if she hadn't been around, I would have gotten even more depressed. But I remember feeling so alone, and I sometimes would try to cut myself, but I didn't use like a real knife. I didn't want to kill myself. I just, something to alleviate the pain, I guess. But I mean, I got out of it, thank goodness, because I had friends. But that was definitely a hard time for me. My first year in college, that was probably the hardest time I've had with depression.
When I got into college, I don't know, there seemed to be like reoccurring like kind of feelings of depression, but it was something that I didn't want to acknowledge. It's something I didn't want to give power to because, you know, I wanted to believe so strongly that it wasn't an issue for me anymore, that I was somehow, for whatever reason, trying to convince myself that I had this issue, you know, and but a lot of those feelings persisted, and it was something I couldn't really shake, and I saw it going on more and more, and, you know, I would just have these really intense highs and lows, and, you know, a lot of times I'd put on, I guess, one facade or one side of myself in front of people, you know, when I felt I had to be on, when I felt I had to fulfill people's expectations of me and who they know me to be. I'd put that on because, you know, I didn't want to disappoint. I didn't want to disappoint, you know, my audience, so to speak.
Folks are afraid that folks with mental illnesses are going to be violent, and we've got pretty good evidence that that's mostly because of media. Mostly because if you see a movie about somebody with a mental illness, they're the murderer, they're the bad guy, they're the person doing the terrorist action. Whereas the real research, not television, not entertainment, says that actually folks with mental illnesses are much more likely to be victims of violence than to commit violence.
There is a lot of stigma surrounding depression as well as other mental disorders, and many of them include the character flaws of the person who is suffering from it. It's your fault, it's not, your family is not able to help you and you are too weak, or you don't have enough friends to help you, you are a bad person, or you visited bad places where people are depressed. It just, people think about you things that then they're not absolutely not true and not necessarily helping in that disorder.
I do encounter every semester several students who seem to be, at least to this layperson, exhibiting many of the symptoms of depression and or anxiety, and in addition to that, many students who come with those diagnoses already having been made. So several students are in therapy or on medication.
You know, if people don't get the proper help, they kind of get trapped in this cycle of not growing and not really moving forward in their lives, or maybe accomplishing certain things in a more tangible sense, like, you know, passing a class and doing that, or maybe something like getting married, but they're still dealing with a lot of things internally that are holding them back in other ways.
Some of the things in general that you might look for include someone whose personal habits seem to change dramatically. Someone who was very neat is suddenly disheveled and they don't look like themselves. Someone who went to class religiously, never missed a class, is suddenly missing classes. So some major change in the person's regular way of doing things. Folks complaining about inability to sleep, or you notice that they sleep all the time. Folks talking about being distressed. Never take those kinds of statements as, well, they don't really mean it. If someone is saying, I'm really depressed, I'm really upset, take that seriously.
I do think there's a level of ambient stress, particularly around the midterm and the end of the semester that all of us experience, the staff, the students, and the faculty. So some of the symptoms are just sort of exaggerated versions of things that I think a lot of us feel. A sense of being overwhelmed, a feeling of hopelessness, not being able to manage everything that's coming at them. Sometimes those stressful conditions can mount to the point where the student is having trouble being successful in school, and that really is the one symptom that gets them into my office talking about these things.
There are two different ways that cultures impact the way people experience depression, anxiety, and a range of disorders. One of the ways that it impacts people is the symptoms that they show. So for some people, they're going to be crying, they're going to be visibly sad. For other people, they're going to be complaining about stomach aches and headaches and mostly talk about physical problems. And for other folks, they're going to be focused on not being able to sleep or not being able to eat. So different cultures tend to focus on different aspects of depression especially. The second way that cultures impact those disorders and the way people react is whether folks are willing to seek help. Because you have some folks who have a major stigma on any kind of weakness, any kind of mental illness, and they are much more likely to feel that they should be, quote, strong. That's not my word. And just suffer, just hide it, where other folks are more willing to admit that there's a problem and seek help for the problems. So it can have a big impact on whether students feel like they can seek help.
From my own experience, I have several relatives diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which includes depression, and we don't talk about it. It's something that's always present in our lives. We all know about it. We all know what's happening, who is it happening to, what is the treatment. We just never talk about it out loud.
What helped me in dealing with my depression was, first of all, realizing that I was depressed. I mean, you can't really fix it if you don't know what's wrong. But I think it was mostly, like friends help, and it was nice to have people to rely on. I mean, I had my roommate. If I didn't have her, I would have just gone further and further into depression. But I think what I really needed to do was to look at my life and realize that I needed to change, that I needed to get out of the depression, and that the only person that could really get me out of the depression was myself.
The hardest part about dealing with that depression was that I didn't know who I could talk to the most about it. I have a lot of family and very good friends, so I did finally realize that just because they haven't been through the same situation doesn't mean that they can't help me through it.
I usually have a few minutes where I'll ask students to go around and volunteer different strategies they have for coping with stress. And in recent years, I've noticed students, again, volunteering, in addition to things like exercising or listening to music or, things like that. I've had students, several, say, well, I go to see a therapist at the University Health Service. And I've found that such a wonderful thing where students are able to act as resources for each other.
The residence hall community directors and the RAs, resident advisors, receive training on helping students in distress. They receive training on giving feedback to students when they're in need of it. So I would say that that's a front line that they can go to. The University Counseling Service is here at the Student Development and Success Center in the little trailers. And we are here 8:30 to 5 every day. We have someone on call for emergencies every day. So you can make an appointment, but you can also come in if you need to see someone immediately. After hours, the community directors and the university police have access to our on-call person. So either through the head resident or the police on campus, you can speak to a counselor anytime. You can get some assistance at any time. There really are a lot of effective treatments these days. So I can say that what I want folks to hear most is that treatments are available that can be effective. You can be done with that problem. You can get over it and talk to people about, I remember when I used to deal with, when I used to struggle with. Oh girl, yes, I remember when I used to, and it can be behind you. We offer individual therapy, we offer group therapy, we offer training sessions on dealing with specific problems like test anxiety. So you can come in and get those resources and overcome a problem completely. We also have a consulting psychiatrist who's available for medication. And a lot of people are hesitant to deal with medication, but like I said, you can be done with dealing with those symptoms. Okay? Be supportive. Be supportive. Actually do talk to the person about what they're feeling, about what they're going to. It's important to let them know that you're with them and that you are willing to go through whatever kind of process with them. And then help them get connected to the resources. So if it's a friend on campus, give them the number to the counseling service, 52472. I said 52472. Give them the number. Have them call while you're there. Call for them. Walk them over. We have people who walk friends over because they're worried about them. And if the student is anxious about coming, they're worried about, well, I'm not sure if I can go. Come with them. You can do that.
My number one suggestion would be to talk to someone if you're feeling depressed. I mean, you need to at least let it out, even if you don't want them to help you, even if you don't want them to say anything. You need to have someone to talk to share your depression with, so that they can understand. You can't, because if you keep it bottled up, then no one knows, and it could just get worse. And I think even if you don't even want help from someone like a professional, that even you just talking about it maybe helps you realize what is making you depressed, and can help you figure out how you can deal with it and how you can prevent it in the future so that things like Virginia Tech don't happen.
Well, I think the main issue that I would want to address with them is that any kind of assistance that they get is confidential. No one's going to know they got that help. So to feel that regardless of how the family might feel about it, the group might feel about it, it's completely confidential. So if you need the help, get the help. You can get that help and not have to hear about it from anybody, because nobody's going to know about it.
I think that the most important thing people and students in particular should know about depression is it's not going to change the way people perceive you. It's not going to change your family's feelings about you. It's not going to change, well, it might change your feelings about you yourself, but it's not going to change. If you have true friends and true relationships with family and close relationships, it will make them even stronger. So don't be afraid to talk about it to people who care about you. Also, depression is something that happens. It's not that much different from a flu. It's something that people deal with almost every day. Some people will experience it more than once in their lifetime, and it's something that needs to be talked about, and it's okay. It's okay to get sick. It's okay to be depressed. It's not okay not to treat it.
So this is the piece that I wrote a few years ago. Probably when this is probably one of the first things I wrote when I started dealing with depression, because I was still in high school when I wrote it. And it's short and simple, but it just, I guess, details to some extent some of the feelings that I guess initially felt, some of the thoughts that I initially noticed that I had within me when I first started dealing with depression. So it's untitled. What's the cause of this eclipse of positive emotion? An absence of something unknown leaves me incomplete. I'm attached to one spot with nothing holding me up. Depression has my attention in a temporary vice. What can fill this emotional cavity? What light can pierce a clouded state of secrecy? Do I need a companion's hand to pull me up from hollow hell? It doesn't matter for now. For now, I'm out.